Afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ramblings of a Grumpy Old Man. So, over the past few videos, I feel like that I've been focusing, not we, because these are the ramblings of a grumpy old man, being me. I have focused a lot on the former president. Today, I think I'd like to focus my attention on the current vice president, Kamala Harris. For those of you that didn't watch, don't care to know, um, her name is pronounced comma, like the punctuation mark, la, like la 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 la. So put those two together, you get comma la. Real simple. Um, it comes down to it's just a matter of respect because the easiest way to disrespect somebody is to mispronounce their name on purpose. So, enough about that. It came to my attention yesterday that Vice President Harris, when she was a senator, sponsored a bill to fully decriminalize marijuana. I don't know how all of y'all feel about that. I know that this idea of fully decriminalizing marijuana has caught on recently. You know, it's I think it's always been kind of smiled upon, but as time progresses and older generations pass on, it's becoming more of a main issue. Now, in the 70s, early 80s, of course, Nancy Reagan in the 80s had the whole just say no to drugs. And I can remember the commercials coming on, of the frying pan. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Yeah, I got a lot. Um, since those times, we have actually found medical uses for certain street drugs, or what were considered street drugs. Most drugs got their start for other purposes. I mean, look up the history of LSD. Uh, you know, the CIA was involved in that one. So, but I don't want to talk about LSD. I don't want to talk about any hard drugs. I want to talk about the decriminalization of marijuana. Now, I live in a state where personal possession of marijuana is legal up to a certain amount, and you can grow up to a certain amount for personal use. So, and I think that's gone a long way to helping to ease the stigma of people that use marijuana. Now, my opinion, I don't know that full decriminalization is a wonderful plan. It's kind of like gun reform. You got to have some common sense because, as we've covered in previous videos, there are people out there that no matter what the rule is, they're going to try and find ways around it. Now, when I moved to the area that I'm in, marijuana was still illegal in the state. So once it became legal, a lot of things happened. Prices dropped, that's for sure, which was a good thing. But people started harvesting their own crops. And there's been some talk and throwing around some ideas of maybe, perhaps, doing a video at a series of video at a later date to show how to legally and within the confines of your own home grow your own supply. Now, growing your own supply, remember that I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. So that breaks the number one rule of being a drug dealer. You don't get high on your own supply. However, I guess if you're just growing it for yourself, then it's okay. It's kind of like growing your own tomatoes. So maybe we'll do that at a later date. Yes, I currently grow my own. I've got a batch going right now. If I do decide to do this series of videos, it will be done in a way that is within the legal parameters of the state that I live in. So we don't recommend that anybody do anything outside the laws of where they live. So check your local guidelines, see what's allowed, see what's not. If it's allowed for you to grow like it is where I live, then grow your own. I essentially have a pretty neat setup that maybe one of these days I'll show you. But to fully legalize marijuana, you would have to consider that without proper permits or licenses, that some people would take it to extreme. Now, the plants I grow produce roughly, I can produce one mature plant, half a pound. And it takes me about 3 months to do it from start to finish. And I just want to put that into context that half a pound. So there's 16 ounces in a pound, so that gives you about 8 ounces. If me and my other half consume an ounce every 2 weeks, which is about normal. I don't think we're I don't think we're extremists by no means. Um, but that's about normal consumption if you maintain a full-time job. I don't ever recommend that anybody go to work under the influence. I know there are people that do. Believe me, I know there's people that do. I just don't recommend it. But so 8 ounces, ounce every 2 weeks, 2 ounces a month, 8 ounces. Takes me 3 months to grow 4 months worth. So I generally keep one plant growing pretty much all year long. And I find that that sustains what we need. The problem I have is that if you fully decriminalize it, then you're going to have those people that are going to want to take it to extremes, like I said, and they'll fill up full rooms of plants. Here's where the problem lies. Because now you have an overabundance. And yes, there are people that don't partake. There are people out there that don't grow. Maybe they're in a condo, or maybe they're just in a situation where it's not feasible. So they're going to get their supply from somewhere else. I don't sell what I grow. I'm even kind of stingy. It's kind of hard for me to even give it away. But there are people out there, like I said, that are going to take it to extremes, and they're going to want to sell what their excess. And here I think is where the problem of full decriminalization goes. I can be in possession in the state that I live in of up to 1 ounce personal possession. My house, for personal use, I can be in possession of up to 1 pound, as long as it's inside my residence. So, in my backwoods redneck mind, I don't see a reason to be in possession of more than a pound for personal use. Now, that's where the problem comes. Because if you legalize its possession and fully decriminalize it, then you are giving people the ability to sell their product. Which, don't get me wrong, there's people out there that grow for dispensaries and for places where it's fully legal. And I've lived in such states. So it's not a, I didn't notice a bad thing when I was in those states. I didn't notice an overabundance of stoned people on the street or driving, which, by the way, we do not recommend. If you have partaken, stay where you are. Do not drive under the influence. There's people that'll disagree with that, and that's fine. You're allowed to disagree with it. I find that if I'm behind the wheel, I prefer to be in complete control and try not to leave anything to chance. So, fully decriminalizing marijuana, um, yeah, I'm not sure. I think fully decriminalizing up to a certain amount is definitely okay. As I've stated, I think possession of a pound is probably more than enough. So, just to be on the safe side, if you fully decriminalize it, then start with 2 pounds. Um, that way, people with larger families can have larger amounts. But I will agree that I believe that we have too many people in the United States incarcerated for marijuana possession that probably shouldn't be. And under the three strikes laws of the 80s, early 90s, we have people that are doing life sentences for possession of marijuana. I think it's a bit extreme. Um, you know, you, you had crack dealers in the 80s that were getting less time than people that were selling marijuana. So I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I wish I did. I think it's here to stay. I think that regardless of your feelings, I don't think we're ever gonna get rid of marijuana. So be careful. Abide by your local guideline, and pay attention to your local, state, federal politicians and listen to what they're saying. Because they all have grandiose ideas. Very few have actually followed through on their plans, and that's okay. I understand that, you know, there are sticklers and there are outliers to every plan. To quote Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face. Um, I am for the legalization of marijuana. Like I said, up to a point. I think that if if you roll in, if somebody comes in your house and you're sitting on a hay bale full, and you've probably got a little more than you can consume in a year. It's just my ideas, though. Now, if Kamala Harris gets a bill to fully decriminalize marijuana and signs it, um, I think that'd be a great day. But I will warn people: let's have some common sense. Let's make these rules, make the laws, rein it in just a little bit, just a little bit. You know, so I mentioned earlier that it's common sense, just like changing gun laws. I mentioned in a previous video that we're talking about assault weapons bans and what that would look like. Given that some careful consideration, because as a gun owner, I don't want to step on my own dick. Um, so I think that common sense gun laws for an assault weapons ban, you're not going to ban semi automatic weapons, which, in order to have an assault weapons ban, that would be the only thing that makes sense. Because the only thing that qualifies something as an assault weapon is it being semi automatic. So, common sense also tells you that you're not going to ban all handguns, all semi automatic handguns, because they would fall into the criteria of an assault weapon. So I think common sense gun legislation probably looks like it did in the early 90s of magazine capacity. Um, I personally, as a gun owner, don't see a reason for 30 round magazines. If you can't hit what you're shooting at in 29 shots, then you probably should turn that last one on yourself. Um, my personal opinions. So, when it comes to making laws in the United States, what may be a good law for one person may not be a good law for another person. So we need to get together and have a discussion. I know what people are saying right now. Oh, he's for banning the guns. No, he's not for banning the guns. Oh, he wants to do away with all the semi-automatics. No, he doesn't want to do away with all the semi-automatics. I own several. I do think we need to figure out a way to keep guns out of the hands of kids. Make that statement, and then I immediately want to backtrack because there are responsible kids out there that use firearms for the intentions that they're intended for. Um, there are kids out there that do go deer hunting with their fathers or their mothers, or grandparents or whoever. Um, you're not using an AR-15 deer hunting, and if you are, you really need to reconsider your choice of weapon. Now, I'm not so asinine as to know that different style weapons don't come in different calibers. So I think that the most reasonable solution are magazine capacities. It's all I've been able to really come up with. You know, I look back and and I think that we have an epidemic in this country of mass shootings. People have decided that their lives, I guess, because again, this is just an assumption because I am not by any stretch of the imagination, nor have I ever wanted to be a mass shooter. So I don't really understand the concept behind it other than to inflict death and pain and suffering and terrorize, make people scared. From what I've been able to tell, most mass shooters end up doing them themselves in. So they have gotten to a point in their lives where they just don't care anymore. And they're going to take as many people with them as they can. Not being a supporter of the Republican ticket this year, the vice presidential candidate made a statement, Mr. Vance, that everybody gave him grief for. That mass shootings have become a way of life and that our schools are soft targets and we need to harden our schools. Harden our school. How about Mr. Vance? I know this isn't a smiled upon idea, but when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones, obviously. You know, we didn't have the new video game. The best you had was, pixelated Pac-Man on the TV. And I mean, even when the newer games came out, um, not everybody had one. So kids got together and, maybe you went over to your friend's house and you played video games for 4, 5, 6 hours. But you were all in a group, you were all hanging out. Now we've got 30-year-olds living in their parents' basement playing video games all day and blaming their problems on everybody else's, where if they would take a minute and turn the TV off and get out and actually do something, then maybe, just maybe, a lot of these shootings wouldn't happen. Now, I say that because I made a reference to schools being soft targets made by, comment made by Mr. Vance there. And okay, I kind of agree with our schools are soft targets. But I also personally think, not agree, well, I do agree with myself, um, that schools are soft targets. And schools should probably remain soft targets. I don't think my granddaughter needs to be going through metal detectors and frisk and shakedowns and lockdown drills in school. It's it's not it's not conducive to a learning environment. So maybe, you know, um, maybe we were simpler people when I was growing up, but we used to get out of the house in the morning. In the summertime, my mother saw me when I got out of bed. She might see me sometime throughout the day. If I had to come home and change clothes to go somewhere, or if I wanted something to drink or something to eat. And then she probably wouldn't see me again until the street lights came on, because I'd be back in before the street lights came on. And, my mother thought I was out riding my bike around the block, and me and my friends would be 10 miles away playing in a river. Um, you know, we have we've gotten to a point to where every generation wants the next generation to have more than they did. I my parents did very well, I feel, for myself and my siblings. Um, we never wanted for anything. And I feel pretty sure that my parents probably went without for us so that we could have the things that we wanted. And I think the biggest thing that the newer generation or the younger generation, newer and younger generation, needs to learn is that there's a difference between wants and needs. You may want something, but do you need it? If you need it, go out there, find a job, work for the money to get what you need. Nobody's going to hand you anything on a silver platter. Um, that's the mistake that my generation made. We wanted all our kids to have everything we didn't have. So we fell down in a time when there was a huge technology boom. Um, you know, Cell phones started coming out. First cell phones that came out were astronomically priced, and only the filthy rich or business people had them. Then the prices started dropping. They became smaller. They became more efficient. Parents were like, okay, well, that's something I never had. So that's something I'm going to give to my kid so they can be in constant contact. Here Herein lies the problem. You don't need a phone in school. For the parents out there, believe it or not, you don't have to be in constant contact with your child. Statistics show that if you send your child out without a phone, there's a really good chance that they're going to come back home at night. Now, are there situations where that doesn't happen? Yes. Have we seen an increase in said situations in the United States over the last decade or two? Yes. And that's a shame because people have lost their sense of morality. The difference of what's doing between doing what's wrong and what's right. As I stated in an earlier video, growing up, the whole neighborhood watched out for all the kids. We have we have come to a time where we don't care about our neighbors anymore and all we worry about are ourselves. We need to get back to caring for others the way we care for ourselves. Um, you know, if you look out and your neighbor's grass hasn't been mowed in a week or two, maybe go over, knock on the door, introduce yourself, ask them, is there something I can do to give you a hand? Can I help you out with this? Um, and quit expecting to get paid. That's another problem everybody has. Oh, well, I could rake those leaves for you, but I'm going to need about, 40 or $50. How about do it out of the kindness of your heart? So, again, I keep going back to it. It seems like every video because I try and keep things relevant. And to hear somebody that wants to be president of the United States say we need to worry about lifting people up instead of putting them down, to me, that sounds like a pretty good policy. Um, you know, again, we have more things that bring us together as a people than the things that divide us. So, people, just okay. So last night, I'm watching Karate Kid, the old one, the original one. Ralph Macchio, Pat Morita. And there's a place in the movie where, Mr. Miyagi is explaining balance and that, balance good, karate good. Balance bad, karate bad. Later on, he tells him it's not just a karate lesson, it's a life lesson. So, Oh, and while we're on the topic of the Karate Kid, uh, September 11th, Dutch passed away. It's one of the characters from the movie. Upon looking him up yesterday, I did find out something that I didn't know, although I wasn't. I was a fan of the movie, but I'm also, when I say I'm a fan of something, I don't do deep dives into things. I don't know, you know, everybody's name. I can't tell you how long they were on the screen. And I know there are people out there that can. But I was doing a little research and I did find out that Chad McQueen, the individual that played Dutch in the movie, was the only son of actor Steve McQueen. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And September 11th, he did pass away. So, you know, keep his family in your thoughts. You know, nobody wants to lose a family member. And, you know, understand that he was only playing a role. I don't know what he was like as a person, but he played the role of the antagonist pretty well. But everything I've seen says he was a really nice guy. So he was just playing a part. Find your balance. Find what makes you happy and do it. So, in closing, if you're for decriminalization of marijuana, Kamala Harris is your candidate. If you're like me and for common sense gun legislation, she's probably your candidate too. Believe me when I tell you that nobody's going to come take your guns. And if they try, send me an email. I'll come stand with you. Because they're not taking mine. I guarantee that. Um, so let's get some common sense gun legislation, some common sense laws to decriminalization of marijuana. And let's just get back as a country to being a country of people with common sense because we're missing that and we really need it. So until next time, this has been the ramblings of a grumpy old man. And keep looking. Never know what we're going to do tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. So long.